Hi. Hola.
Hi, here's Mr. Dozy.
This is Michael Bradley.
Hey, I'm Memphis.
Hey.
Hola. Hello.
I'm here with soccer.com.
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 And I'm talking with my friends soccer.com.
See you soon.
Hey guys, Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feet video of the brand new Nike Hypervenom Phantom 3 low cut in the launch colorway, which of course is part of the Radiation Flare pack. Now, this is the shoe, or at least the variation of a Flyknit model from Nike that we've all been asking for. Obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo has his modified lower collar version of the Superfly 5. We have seen some professional players cut the collar off as well, which isn't necessarily going to change the fit of the shoe in the heel, but we now finally have a low-cut Flyknit model from Nike, and it's in the form of the Phantom 3. Of course, the Phantom 3 DF is also available if you want to see some content on that. It's up on my channel. I'll leave a pop-up on screen. The DF, or mid-cut version of this shoe, retails for $300, whereas the low-cut variation that I have right here retails for $50 less at $250 US. So in today's video, we're going to be going over all of the tech specs and features of this low-cut variation of the Hypervenom Phantom 3. And by the way, it's just called the Phantom 3 now. It's no longer called the Hypervenom Finish like we had in the second generation of Hypervenoms with the Phantom 2 and the Finish. One was a mid-cut, one was a low-cut. Now they're both called Phantom 3, just the mid-cut one's called the Phantom 3 DF. Hopefully that makes sense. Nonetheless, we're going to go over all the details in this video, so if you want to learn more, stick around. If you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below in the description. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find Buy It Now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $250 retail price. Now, as far as the actual shoe itself is concerned, the upper is entirely the same when compared to the DF mid-cut version of the shoe. The only part that's different is basically from here back. And it's not so much the upper that changes, it's just the construction of the heel area. So in place of the dynamic fit collar, you have nothing. You have a standard heel construction, pretty much like what we saw on the Hypervenom Finish, if I'm comparing it to anything else. Almost identical to what we got on the Hypervenom Phantom 1 as well. So you can see it's a standard low cut. You have an internal plastic heel counter, and this, of course, the kind of external kind of faux heel counter with these little kind of wedge pieces on either side. We'll talk about that more a little bit later in the video. But basically it's a standard low cut, smooth synthetic leather liner on the inside with a standard amount of padding. It does make a dramatic difference in terms of how these fit and feel on feet, to the point where I would go out on a limb and say that I definitely do prefer the fit of the low cut variation. It just feels more normal, if that makes any sense. You can absolutely still get a comfortable fit from the Phantom 3 DF. I actually find that shoe to be very comfortable in general, especially for a Nike mid-cut model. But for me personally, I much prefer the fit of this. I find it to be a little bit more secure, a lot more familiar. Plus, I don't necessarily love the actual collar on the mid-cut variation. It doesn't offer any kind of performance benefit. It's essentially just extra material wrapping your ankle that's attached to the rest of the shoe. So again, there is no performance benefit to getting this version over the mid-cut one, or vice versa, because I know a lot of people will ask which version is better. It really is just a matter of personal preference. With that said, if you're talking about straight up bang for your buck value, $50 less for this low-cut variation is the better value. Straight up, there's really no other way of putting it. Now, as far as other aspects of the low-cut model are concerned, you can see that it does maintain a one-piece construction for the upper, which is pretty important. So you get elasticated Flyknit running through the middle where the laces are, where a tongue would normally be. But once you get to the point where it is cut for a low-cut shoe, it basically just ends and it folds over and you're left with an elasticated piece. So essentially, you have an elasticated central piece that fills in the middle part of the shoe, and it feels very normal. Honestly, I actually really like it. It gives you that natural sensation. It gives you that sock-like wrap on your foot, as you would expect from this new Flyknit upper, and that's really all there is to say about it. Another slight benefit, if you want to call it that, of the lower cut variation is the weight of the shoe. The fact that you don't have the extra material for the mid-cut aspect means that you shave a little bit of weight off of the Phantom 3DF. So instead, the low-cut Phantom 3 weighs in at 6.6 ounces, which is 0.3 ounces less than the Phantom 3DS. A small weight difference, but still something that is, I guess, somewhat noticeable in hand, not so much on feet. And that now makes the low-cut Phantom 3 the second lightest model currently on offer from Nike. The only lighter shoe that they offer is the Nike Mercurial Vapor 11, but of course the fit and feel of that shoe is significantly different in comparison to these. Now, everything else on this shoe is identical to what you'll find on the Phantom 3DF. So the upper does have the 3D texturing across the entire shoe, and of course it is made from a Flyknit material. So the Flyknit has this interesting texturing of basically what is kind of a diamond shape running all the way throughout the upper. It varies a little bit in terms of how the pattern is, but basically it's just giving a little bit of texture to the surface of the upper as opposed to leaving it completely flat. And in regards to thickness, it kind of puts this shoe in between what you'll get from the Obras as well as the Superflies. It's kind of that middle ground in that the shoe is definitely on the thinner side, but it doesn't feel overly padded or have that same kind of more dampened sensation that you get from the Obra 2. So I know a lot of people who are worried about this shoe being Flyknit now and feeling too similar to the Superfly or the Obra. That really isn't the case. It does have its own unique sensation when you have them on feet. So really like how they feel in that regard. As far as the actual foam is concerned, because that is something that a lot of people are definitely pretty interested in with this particular model. And I did go over the performance characteristics of the upper in my playtest video on the Phantom 3DF. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen. But essentially what's happening here in the main striking area of your foot, you can see there's a little bit of a white detail on these particular diamond pieces, and they're a little bit higher in terms of how they're raised off the upper. What you have is 2 millimeters of pour-on foam, which is a rate-dependent material, meaning that upon harder contact, more severe contact, like a strike of a ball, for example, it's gonna have a firmer sensation, basically to the point where you don't necessarily feel it. It's only 2 millimeters of this foam material, but again, it's rate dependent. So harder impacts are gonna make the foam feel a lot firmer, and softer impacts like passing the ball and juggling, you're gonna get a little bit of a cushion feel without taking away from actual ball feel. It's not gonna have this numbness against your foot. You still feel all of the ball. There's just a little bit of a dampened effect without adding significant bulk to the upper itself, which is actually a pretty cool thing. It's not, again, a major feature on this shoe, and like I said, it's not really super noticeable when you're actually using them. Really, all it's doing here, mainly when striking the ball, is just taking the edge off. If you've ever struck the ball in a really thin pair of shoes, like a Mercurial Vapor 11s, if you do that for 20 minutes straight, you're gonna have kind of a stinging sensation on your foot. This little bit of foam does definitely take away from that to a certain extent, which is a good or bad thing depending on your own personal preferences. But for me, I actually really enjoyed the feel of this upper. And again, I just think it's a really good example of how Flyknit has evolved in such a way to where they can have the same material on multiple different shoes, but using different designs and different patterns and even different materials with the implementation of foam in this case, create a completely different experience that ultimately performs very well and does offer that sock-like feel on feet, that sock-like level of comfort, and just a good fit in general that a lot of people like from these new knitted uppers that have become so popular. Other features that you're gonna find on this upper is, of course, a Nike skin covering for the surface, basically just a polyurethane top layer acting as a protective layer, as well as not allowing the upper to be completely slick. It's not really a grippy shoe in terms of the amount of grip on the ball. It's pretty similar to what we got from the previous generation of Hypervenom, if I'm comparing it to anything. Also going to be pretty similar in terms of grip when compared to the Obra or the Superfly 5. You're also going to find that you do get ACC all conditions control. The branding is listed right there. It's a wet control element from Nike, but not honestly something that has a big significant impact on the overall feel and general performance of the shoe. I think it's more of a gimmicky thing than anything. As far as the lacing system is concerned, the lacing system is attached directly to the shoe by way of flywire cables that crisscross at the end and obviously come out to actually act as the lacing positions for the shoes themselves. So these flywire cables, you can see they're visible within the design of the shoe. They run from the base of the sole, run up to where the laces are attached. They attach to the laces, and then when you pull those, it pulls on those flywire cables and holds your foot in place. A lot of people are very concerned about these exposed cables perhaps being not the most durable thing in the world. Keep in mind that this is not the first time that Nike has used this type of a system. It's the first time on a pair of soccer cleats, but not the first time that we've seen it on basketball shoes, running shoes, and all kinds of different performance models from Nike. So again, it's a possibility that this could snag, but in all honesty, when the laces are tied tight, it pulls down on these strings, so they're pretty much pressed directly against the shoe, and the actual opening for these lace loops, if you want to call them that, are very, very small. So the likelihood of a stud actually getting caught in there is a very, very low percentage. As long as you're careful when lacing them up, you shouldn't have too many issues. And in regards to how effective it is when locking your foot in place and just adding stability to the upper, it does a very good job. There's not a lot of internal structure to the shoe itself that takes away from the softness of the Flyknit. It really does have that nice sock-like sensation on your foot, which I am a big fan of. Obviously, you do have the continuation of the Flyknit material through the middle, although it's elasticated as opposed to structure. So you get that little bit of expansion when you actually put these on. Then it kind of compresses to the shape of your foot once your foot is actually in there. And again, the lacing system overall, very, very effective, slightly off-centered, and pretty much identical to what you would get on the DF model. Keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is internally, you're gonna find that it has a Nike grip insole. So I'll pull this out. This is something that they're touting as a major feature. Based on my testing, I didn't really notice it to be anything special at all, but essentially you have a Nike grip material lining the surface of the insole of what is otherwise just kind of an ortholite type material. It's got a decent thickness to it, good amount of underfoot cushioning, but as far as the impact on performance that this Nike grip material has, honestly, if you didn't tell me it was an actual performance feature, if they didn't tell me this was Nike grip, I would have guessed it was just a regular insole with a standard mesh liner. So really, not really a big feature in regards to actual performance benefit, but something that they have included and listed as a tech spec. I would kind of put this on the same level as ACC All Conditions Control. Something that they say is there, they say it's going to help you, but in all honesty, it's not really doing all that much. Internally as well, you can see those little black lines. They do have some grips in the heel as well as in the forefoot at the base of the sole plate to allow for the actual insole to grip to the base of the shoe and prevent it from sliding around. That's a cool little feature that we first saw introduced on the Obras, and they have of course continued it here on the new Phantom 3 variations. We talked about the low cut aspect. Of course, you do have this kind of faux heel counter. I guess that's what the best way to call it. It's this little kind of triangular piece on either side, along with an internal piece. And basically it's just there for lateral stability, preventing your heel from sliding from side to side. Not so much a protective element, but I do think it looks pretty cool. And it seems to work quite well based on the stability of the shoe when it is on your feet. As far as the sole plate is concerned, the sole plate features a combination of Pebax and nylon materials. Pebax predominantly used in the forefoot, which is why it is so flexible, and then nylon through the midfoot and heel area to give it some more rigidity and just general structure. By far the most flexible variation of the Hypervenom Phantom that we've ever seen. A lot more flexible than the first two generation sole plates, and overall it just gives this shoe a much more natural feel, much easier to break in, and I just prefer more flexible sole plates in general. But at the same time, despite its flexibility, it doesn't feel flimsy, it doesn't feel overly thin, it has good structure to it, and I just like this sole plate in general. I think they did a pretty good job with that new feature on this shoe. As far as the stud pattern is concerned, this is what they call their hyper-reactive stud pattern. This, of course, being the firm ground variation. And essentially what they did is on the lateral side, they incorporated the mercurial chevron-shaped studs. On the medial side, they incorporated some hexagon studs that perform and feel more like conical studs, as opposed to just hexagons, which obviously looks a little bit cooler, but doesn't actually impact performance that much. And then a couple bladed studs there in the middle of the forefoot for added kind of support and general structure through the middle of what would normally be a completely empty space. So the end result in regards to traction is positive. Really, Nike tends to do a pretty good job with their stud patterns. It's a big redesign in comparison to previous generation Hypervenoms, and in all honesty, it does feel completely different. But what I like about this sole plate and general stud pattern is that it feels very stable. You get a good amount of studs underneath your feet. Traction seems to be pretty good because you have the more aggressive bladed studs on the lateral side. When you are making those quick lateral cuts, you tend to get a good amount of bite, but still that freedom to twist and pivot when you're on your toes with these more conical style hexagon shaped studs on the medial side. So it's kind of a hybrid of what you'll get from the Magista and the Mercurial lines. And that's kind of what they did with this particular shoe. It truly is a middle ground between the Magistas and the Mercurials, which I actually think is a pretty cool concept and one that actually does work quite well. So we talked pretty much everything about the colorway, not the colorway, sorry, all the tech specs, but now let's talk about the colorway. So this of course is part of the radiation flare pack. Obviously the look of the low cut model is a little bit different. I personally prefer just how the low cut version looks. I think a lot of people do like the collars, and there is something to that, absolutely, but I just like the look of a standard low-cut shoe personally. And as far as this radiation flare pack color is concerned, it's extremely bright. You have the poison green basically on the lateral side of the heel, then it fades to volt yellow, and then completely transitions kind of on a diagonal within the Flyknit pattern to this very bright hyper orange color, which you can see here across the entire medial side of the shoe. There's a little bit of a division line at the very back of the heel. You get the black Nike swoosh on the front, the black Nike swoosh at the heel, and then the sole plate is predominantly black in color as well. So they're extremely bright. If you're looking to stand out, this colorway will definitely do it for you. But just in regards to general aesthetics, I personally think the low cut model looks a little bit better than the mid cut, but that is a personal opinion. I'd be curious to hear yours down below in the comment section. So that's enough about the shoes themselves. Let's take a look at how they fit and feel on feet. So you can see here on the right shoe, I threw in some black and neon yellow grid pattern SR4U replacement laces. If you're interested in a pair of replacement laces for yourself, the website to go to is www.sr4ulaces.com. There'll be a little pop-up on screen as well as a link down below in the description of this video. So if you're interested in a pair, be sure to go ahead and check that out. So as you can see, getting them on, pretty straightforward. It's a one-piece upper, so the opening is not going to be the biggest thing in the world, but you do have some decent stretch from this central part where the tongue would normally be. So getting them on is pretty much just like a regular pair of shoes. I would say easier than a lot of the other the other one-piece uppers that we have seen from Nike, be it the Mercurial Vapor 11 or even the Hypervenom Finish. This is pretty easy to get on, and once they're on, the shoe just feels very comfortable in general. This Flyknit upper really doesn't have a lot of reinforcement to it that isn't flexible as well. So obviously those Flywire cables, they add a lot of structure when you pull the laces tight, but it doesn't add a lot of stiffness to the upper. So you maintain a good kind of sock-like comfort level and just general softness on your foot. As far as getting them on, I'll just give you guys another look at this. Again, you basically just want to grab the heel, grab the front. You don't want to put too much pressure on the back heel part and slide them on. It's a pretty straightforward process, not difficult to do like I mentioned. Tie these up really, really quickly. And again, you'll notice that when you do pull the laces tight on this, because it is directly attached to the Flywire system, you really do notice that those Flywire cables get some tension, and then they really do help to hold your foot in place and make the upper wrap your foot as closely as possible. So you get this really nice kind of one-to-one connected sensation in terms of how closely the shoe wraps your foot, which is definitely a positive thing. And on feet, very comfortable shoes. Again, the heel area, I just find the low-cut shoe, the familiarity of that, to be a lot more comfortable than that of the mid-cut models. And in all honesty, I think if most people tried on the mid-cut and the low-cut versions of the Phantom 3 side by side, most people, if they weren't lying to themselves, would probably say that the low-cut one is more comfortable. It is definitely my preference, like I mentioned, but ultimately it is completely up to you. The DF model, the mid-cut version, is still very, very good. You definitely can achieve a comfortable fit. And if you absolutely must have the mid-cut collar, then for sure, spend the extra $50. But if you don't want it, if you prefer a more low-cut feel, a more low-cut kind of familiar feel and fit from the shoe, I definitely think that the low-cut version of the Phantom 3 is the way to go. As far as the width and general fit of the shoe is concerned, it does have a tighter fit overall. Kind of the same general shape as what we got from previous generations of Hypervenoms, so not quite as narrow as what you'll get from the Mercurials or as tight fitting, but obviously not as wide as what you'll get from the Magistas or the Tiempo lines. It's kind of that middle ground, but still, being a tighter fitting shoe, they definitely don't feel like they are overly narrow by any means. They've got some decent width to them, and as long as you don't mind a tighter fit overall, I would say they're going to fit most people. They're not going to stretch all that much, so please keep that in mind. The way they fit out of the box, it's for the most part the way they're going to fit for their entire lifespan. But like I said, I think width-wise, most people shouldn't have too many issues with these. As far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing my usual size 9 US here, and the fit and the length is absolutely perfect. So of course, just like previous generation of Hypervenoms, if you are interested in a pair of these for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So that is pretty much it, guys, for my review of the Nike Hypervenom Phantom 3 the low cut variation that I just want to call the Phantom 3, but I feel the need to say low cut. Nonetheless, if you guys do have any questions regarding this shoe, leave them down below in the comments and I definitely will get an answer out to you. If you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. If you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, you can click the little eye in the corner of the screen or the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes. You'll be able to pick these up below their normal $250 retail price. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all of my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.